Hello and welcome back to another episode of TÄCHES Teaches. I'm Tash, and today I want to show you how you can use the S and H or sample and hold LFO in the grid to behave a little something like the Turing Machine Eurorack module. The Turing Machine is a device which, based on some rather complex and over-my-head mathematical modelling computations, allows you to feed out a steady stream of random voltages but then lock them. And this allows you to sort of play with randomness in a way that you can nudge it into the direction that you want it to go, but there's no real set control. It's sort of a happy accident machine. And you can define how long you want the loops of this locked randomness to be. You can also introduce elements of randomness back into that. But at the end of the day, all it really is a ideas machine. And I want to show you how you can do that in the grid. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, the first thing we're going to do is load up an S&H and an LFO. So if we take this out here, I'm going to pop it up here for a sec, just so we can have a look at what's happening. I use this device a lot, but I've only really just realized that it can be used in that kind of sense. So if we put this into an oscilloscope, we can see that by default, it's just giving us random wibbledy-wobbledy waves. And if we push this top knob all the way to the right, we get very smooth, undulating randomness. If we take it all the way to the left, we get stepped random. And the length of the step is defined by the time here. So if I say 16th notes, we're now getting random voltages on every 16th note. We can then change as well whether or not, this works better in conjunction with the next section, but we can say whether or not we want them to be with the possibility of reoccurring and looping, or whether we want them to be what's more of a Brownian motion sort of thing, where they, I think they're 50% likely to go back or left. I'm not quite sure of the mathematics of this, but there is a variation in how you use it. Now I'm just going to take the sample and hold LFO down here, and I'm going to plug that in as our pitch control. And if we have this as it is when it first plugs in, I'm going to turn the volume down a bit, and we listen to what we get. It sounds like this. A little bit too insane. So as always, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quantizer module, and first and foremost, we're going to say that all of this randomness should at least be quantized to something. And today I'm feeling a little bit Lydian, so we're going to try out C Lydian here. And let's have a look to what we got now. Okay, sounding better, but still we need to limit that down and scale it in a bit. And you could, of course, use the pitch scaler, but one thing I hate about this, I don't know whether this is a bug on my Ableton, but I can't just say C6 because it takes me to C11, so I have to remember that C6 is actually C-1 or C0, C1. Anyway, I don't really like using that, and instead I just like to use the attenuation knob. And I'll just slap that over here, and I'll say all the way down at 0, we just get a fixed tone, and every 10% introduces an octave. So if we do 20%, we have the possibility for 2 octaves of randomness. Okay, again, we're still getting a bit too much of the wibbledy-wobblediness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all the way to the left. Let's have a listen to that. Okay, sounding a lot better, but it's still just total randomness. If I put this to the left, in theory, we should get the occasional repeating section, and that would be defined by this epoch, which I guess is the, what do they call it? The length of the sequence, number of steps used by the feedback loop. So in theory, we should get the possibility of 4 fed-back loops here. But when I've played with this in the past, it still hasn't given me what I was expecting. I have a Mutable Instruments Marbles here, which is sort of based off of the same concept of the Make Music Turing Machine, which is a fantastic Turing machine. But it wasn't giving me that. Up here you have the possibility to lock and say, well, give me 8 steps of locked random, and if you twist this top knob to the left or the right, you can introduce random into that. So there I was playing with this, thinking that I was now locking it, and it wasn't quite working, and I figured out today a way to do that. So let's take this back again. if I bring in an oscilloscope in here, I know I've said it before, but the oscilloscope is your best friend in learning how to do modular stuff. You know, it really is the best way to understand what your modules are doing and what's happening, because when you can see it, it's easier to understand it. So currently you can see here that we're getting all sorts of random pitches. Some of them are quite close together. Occasionally we'll get, like there, one where the pitch doesn't change, and sometimes they'll be very drastic. So what we want to do is find a way to limit the madness to a set length, and then manipulate from there the parameters on this device to sort of get into a space which we're into. And the way that we do this is not described actually on the module, nor is it really described here. It says trigger restarts the LFO's phase, but I don't think that's a very good description of what the point of that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a gates module here, and I'm going to put the volume back on again, and I'm going to say that every time this gate restarts, or every time we hit this gate, I want to re-trigger this device. So look what happens now. As I start to play, so we've now locked that piece of random, because every time we restart this after, I guess this is a bar, we're now getting a bar of random notes. And if I manipulate this, so we've now locked that in, and of course, depending on how often we get a gate into the trigger reset will define how long the pattern is. So despite the fact that these are set to 16th notes, if I now take a phase in and a phase scalar, and I'm also going to take, just for the sake of it, a phase reset, because every time I stop and restart, I'm going to take this transport in. Every time I start and stop my transport, it's going to reset the phase. So we're going to start from 0 every time, because if I remove this, sometimes we'll play through and well, it's actually working now. But anyways, so what we're going to do is we're now going to set this. Okay, that's why we weren't actually controlling it. Yeah, if I remove this, we're starting from halfway through, when in fact I want to start from the beginning every time. So we're going to bring that transport playing in, and now you'll see every time I press play we're starting from the beginning, which is very handy. A lot of devices using phase, you really want to use this phase reset if you want to maintain any of your sanity. Okay, cool. So this allows us to change the speed of this loop. So if I put this to 2-1, now we're going to get a loop that's half the length. And of course we can still manipulate with this. And also this epoch down here, now this will come into play. This is a value from 0 all the way up to 32. And again, I'm a bit confused as to how exactly this works in the Bitwig fashion, but what this in theory should be is the length of steps possible for repeating. So if I make this into maybe 4 bars now, it's maybe a bit too long. Let's put this back to just 2 bars. Okay, so we're getting that loop there, but as we scroll through these different epoch values, it's easier on just maybe a 1 bar pattern to be able to hear. So this epoch and then this knob will give us quite large variations in the pattern that's being looped. Okay, so what could also be quite cool now is you can see that sometimes we're staying on a note. And it might be quite cool to only trigger the envelope here when there's a note. Obviously, if we were to just trigger it with a gates module, we could do that. We could take a gates here and say, well, we're on 16th notes coming out of here, so let's select 16, And let's trigger the envelope like that. But really, I want to change note only. I want to send an envelope for the volume only when the note changes, because that will introduce a little bit of spacing every now and then. And the way that we can do that is we can use an envelope that only fires when it only fires every time a note changes. And we can do this with some very simple maths. And I'm going to take another oscilloscope up here. And let's have a look, actually, what's coming out of the quantizer. So if we throw this in here, you can see that every now and then we get a note that's twice as long, and that's this note here. So in theory, if we were to compare that value, if we were to compare the value coming out of the pitch quantize with the value coming out of the pitch quantize a millisecond later, seeing as that delay is constant, it's constantly saying, are you the same now as you were a millisecond ago? What we can do now is take a not equals sign, and we can say, is the value coming out of this pitch quantize equal to, and then let's take a delay module, and we'll bring this all the way down to 0, and we'll say, is the delayed signal of the pitch quantizer not equal to the value coming out of the pitch quantizer? So we'll put that in there, and if I attach this to the gate, you'll hear that we don't have anything. And that's because we're comparing the actual value with the actual value. But as soon as we start to introduce some delay here, I think a nice way of looking at this before I actually just go ahead and show you now is to say, okay, we'll do this not equals here, and we'll put the output of this into there. Let's remove that, and let's make this a different color. So you can see now that we have both the orange and the green going in here, but we can't see the green at the moment. As I start to delay the green, you can see that we've got the orange signal coming up behind it. So this is equivalent of saying, when the orange and the green are different, i.e. here, trigger. And when they're the same, i.e. while a note is being held, don't trigger. So if we put this back here again, let's have a look. And cool. So now we can put this into here, and as soon as we start to introduce a bit of delay, cool. We could now change the epoch a bit, see if we can get a different pattern to come through. Maybe change it to eighth notes. It's quite nice. And again, all of these variations will quite radically change that melody. If we were to bring this up to 30%, we're even going to get a higher spread of notes from low to high. The one thing I would say is this up top is best all the way to the left, because once you start moving, you get these... You start to get these wibbledy-wobbledy bits, and it doesn't work quite so well with the comparator. You have to bring the delay up a bit more. Bring that back a bit. And again, like I've done in all of my previous videos, it's quite lovely to then take another oscillator tuned to the same scale. Let's take a transpose here, and let's add a third, take the pitch out of there, slap that into here, and instead of then just going directly into here, why don't we make a mixer? And let's do 12, let's do 15, so up an octave. And then let's also do 10, so we'll go for a 7th as well. -2. And now as we start to change this, and what we could also do now is introduce another sample and hold LFO. And let's slap an oscilloscope on that so we can see what's going on here. We'll do fixed straight values, and we'll make it every bar, because then that will change every time we loop round here. We can now map that, if we bring this all the way to the left, to any value across here. And we can restart this. Really lovely. Now, for the sake of making this even more special, let's just duplicate the whole thing down. And because we've got then another sequence playing here, why don't we set this to be shorter, and we'll do one every time there. Set this to a different value, maybe we'll go all the way to the left first. And let's also change these to triangle waves, maybe. And let's see what happens if we now... Oh, I'm going to have to take another of these envelopes, I forgot about that. For some reason we've got no sound coming out of here. Why is that? Okay, yeah. Trigger the... we've got no output, of course. Okay, lovely. One problem with this is that the sample and hold LFO will just continue playing. Even if I pause it, it's just going to keep playing. So what you could do is, if you were to record the audio out, just get your timing right. Anyways, I think that's a lovely little overview of some cool shit that you can do with the sample and hold LFO. Just have a play around with the timing that you use to reset it. And you can set up all sorts of automations to then change this bit here. Instead of it being a random LFO triggering that, you could use, say, a steps module. And each one of these steps could then control what epoch you're on. So if you put that up 10, and you used... let's take another phase scaler here, make this a bit slower. You could then set, let's take transport here. Yeah, of course, you can now set this to control Anyways, as always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to keep up to date with all of the future videos, then remember to press that little bell icon as well for notifications. I am also a Bitwig certified instructor, in case anyone would like some one-on-one tuition. As always, happy Tuesday, friends, and happy creating.